What's going on, freaks and friends? Got another video for you here today. As you saw by the title, this is going to be a ranking video. This is a video that I have been wanting to get out for a while, but of course with the inactivity over the last year and a half, whatever, this video was ultimately delayed, but I figure now is as good a time as any to rank the ghosts in 13 Ghosts. Let's go. Some of you guys may know already, and for those of you who don't, 13 Ghosts is one of those movies that, despite it being a pretty schlocky film, just kind of a cheesy, fun little time, it's a movie that is very near and dear to my heart. It's one of the 10 movies that shaped my childhood as far as horror movies go, and it's one that I've just always held near and dear to my heart as a horror film. I did a review for it a few years back. I'm not sure if that's any good, but there's going to be a link to that up here. You would think with the title 13 Ghosts that there would be 13 ghosts throughout the runtime of the film. That is not entirely true. There are only 12 ghosts that appear throughout the course of the film. There is a 13th ghost mentioned, but that's sort of a... it's supposed to activate the device that is the Eye of Hell. It's the whole machine that the house is. That's a whole story. We're not going to get into the whole mechanics of the film. We're here to rank the ghosts. We're going to be ranking the 12 major ghosts that appear throughout the film. The 13th ghost, I'm going to tell you right now, is only going to be left as an honorable mention. Not really going to go too much into that one. I like it in theory. The whole idea that, hey, the sacrificial act of love is basically the coming to being for the 13th ghost. I think that is pretty damn cool. But we're going to be taking a look at the big 12 ghosts. So let's get into the ranking. So there's going to be 4 major factors that really go into where I'm placing each ghost in the ranking here. We're going to be taking a look kind of at their backstory, taking that into account, their threat level, their appearance, and most importantly, the opinion factor. So let's get it going. Starting in at number 12, we're taking a look at the Dire Mother. This is probably the least intimidating of the ghosts in life. She is depicted as having been a small lady who stood barely 3 feet tall, very harmless. When you see her ghostly depiction, she's accompanied by her son, the Great Child, who we'll obviously be mentioning later, and, you know, she seems to be like kind of the brains behind the operation there. If you take a look at the ghost files on the DVD or pull it up on YouTube here, you'll kind of know that if there is sort of the brains to that little family organization, that's going to be her. But as far as her threat level, she's not very threatening. She's probably one of the least sort of graphically depicted ghosts. Like, she does have sort of the rotted skin look. There's a little white film over one eye to depict blindness there. I thought that was a pretty cool little touch. But as far as her appearance goes, there's not really a whole lot to write home about. But cool little ghost. The backstory is pretty cool, where she was a circus performer, but it is honestly probably one of the most dark and fucked up of all the backstories, so I will give credit where it's due there. Again, just check out the ghost files there, because I don't want to talk about the subject matter there, just because it's uncomfortable. So number 12, the Dire Mother. Coming in at number 11, this is perhaps one of the most sympathetic of the ghosts here. This is going to be the Withered Lover. And this one is basically the deceased wife of Tony Shalhoub's character, Arthur. And you could hear her death scene actually occurring during the opening credits of the film, which is kind of a quick way to just sort of let us know, hey, this is what happened. Like, you see the little happy suburban life they've got. But, you know, she dies in a house fire, dies in the hospital. And she goes on to take the form of the Withered Lover once Uncle Cyrus captures her ghostly form. You know, she offers sort of a sentimental little approach to the plot. There's the moment there when Tony Shalhoub is behind the glass there, and her ghost approaches him, and it's when they're all being summoned to the little circle in the middle of the house. It's a touching moment, but she's probably the absolute least threatening, perhaps the kindest of all the ghosts. In fact, she warns her son to get the fuck out of the basement. So yeah, the Withered Lover, number 11. Coming in at number 10, we have another absolutely harmless ghost. This one is going to be the Torso. This one I think has one of the cooler backstories, where basically he was a compulsive gambler, and you know, he lost out on a bet, gets chopped up, and you know, that's sort of his form. His ghost form is him with his head wrapped in cellophane, his torso's wrapped in cellophane. His legs were never found, but the cool behind the scenes aspect there is they had a double amputee actor portraying the character, which I think is pretty damn cool. It's funny too, because I always remember this ghost had legs. Goes to show when you're a little kid, you don't really let everything sink in there. So I remember it took a couple years before I realized, oh, that's why they call him the Torso, because that's all he is his torso. But really effective as far as appearance goes. Threat level is among the absolute minimum. Really cool look. Again, the whole cellophane wrap going on there is pretty cool. But he's one of those ones, you take his head from him and roll it down the hallway, he's not gonna be coming after you. He's gonna be trying to drag himself to find his head. So the Torso, number 10. Coming in at number 9, this is a ghost that I think definitely has one of the more beautiful appearances as far as the actress who played her goes. We're taking a look at the Bound Woman, and while she's not necessarily the most intimidating as far as threat level goes, I think her threat level really only applies when she's in human form, before she's killed off and made into a ghost. She does more psychological damage, really, that emotional damage. Her backstory is that she was sort of that girl who was promiscuous in her high school days. She kind of shuffled through boyfriends like Spinal Tap shuffled through drummers. So that was kind of her deal there. She gets caught cheating, gets her neck broken. And, you know, the actress was really good at sort of conveying that weird broken neck sort of style there, where, you know, she's got her head kind of hanging to the side like so. And the way that her head just kind of jiggled, it was really freaking freaky, man. And that one was always particularly effective for me when I was a kid. So the Bound Woman, number 9. Coming in at number 8, this one is a particularly interesting one here. It's going to be the Firstborn Son. And this one I always found to be pretty effective because having saw this movie as a kid, I thought the whole notion of a kid ghost, there was something about it that was just unsettling. Again, being a kid, seeing that there's a kid who is, for all intents and purposes, a dead kid was freaking terrifying. It was one of those things that just sort of gave you that weird perspective on your own mortality at such a young age for me, that it was just one that I wasn't the most comfortable seeing just because of that. You know, it's like, holy crap, I'm gonna be dead one day. You know, that was just like my little kid rationality there. And the appearance too, the way he's got the arrow through the freaking front of the head, and that's just a very brutal element to his backstory too, just that he got the freaking arrow through the back of his head because he and the neighbor kid wanted to play cowboys and Indians. That steel-tipped arrow against the cap guns, the arrow's gonna win every time. Coming in at number 7, this is the only ghost whose placement on the list is in accordance with their placement in the Black Zodiac within the context of the film. That's going to be the Pilgrimess. This one's particularly sold by her backstory, where during those sort of pre-colonial era there, she's coming to America and she's thought to be a witch, so they try to corner her in a barn, set it on fire. She comes out of the barn completely unscathed, so they put her in the slow death on the stockade. And that's part of her visual appearance, is having the freaking wooden board around her head and freaking wrists there. So when she runs at you, she's, you know, kind of limited, but she's got that freaking 40-pound piece of wood probably. I'm just guessing that's probably how much that would have weighed. And it's always funny when she like hits the glass too, and she's like, oh. It's just really silly looking, but I don't know, she's not one that I would want to have chasing me. Like, she couldn't really do a whole lot if she grabbed you, but she'd knock you on your freaking ass. And that dried up skin look too is really kind of unsettling too, and the filmy eyes too. Just really creepy appearance there. Not the scariest ghost, but just her appearance and backstory really is kind of where she's at. Coming in at number 6 is going to be the Great Child. Again, there's always that sort of fear of the unknown sort of fascination when it comes to 19th century circus performers. And he, being that his character is one of those, he's basically an overgrown man baby. Like that's just the way the character is. It's just a really creepy appearance, you know. It's like you got a 6'3" dude, overweight, rocking the diaper, holding a freaking axe to the side. He's got the vomit on the chest. I think that was part of the original backstory that they actually had for the Great Child and the Dire Mother, where he was supposed to have been overfed and then collapsed on her, and then they both kind of die there. Like, she gets smothered under him. But they decided to go the route where the mother is kidnapped, you know, and she ends up dying as part of that prank by the other circus performers. He lashes out by basically mutilating everybody with an axe, and he's eventually said to be mutilated himself, but we don't see him being victim of mutilation. So that's probably why I think their scrapped backstory is part of their appearance. But the Great Child is just one of those ones that's really freaking freaky, man. I don't know, that whole dynamic between those two is just freaking scary. Coming in at number 5, this is one of those ones where the appearance is one of the high selling points. That's going to be the Angry Princess. You've got a very beautiful, attractive, naked woman, but her whole body is covered in freaking very deep scars, like just cuts all over her body. There's that weird juxtaposition there where it's like you have the beauty and you have like the death element in there, which makes it very imbalanced sort of visual style there, and I think it's pretty effective there. I would say she's probably one of the scarier ones too. Like when you see the scene with the lawyer when he starts to back up when she's released from her cube, and you know, he's like, oh yeah, I made a joke about your tits earlier. I'm trying to backtrack now. I didn't mean anything. You know, so, I mean, she's carrying a freaking kitchen knife, so that's already kind of scary. You don't want to piss off a woman with a knife. But she's one of those ghosts that I always thought was pretty cool. Very tragic backstory. Just the chick who's so beautiful she doesn't even realize that she's almost beyond freaking perfection there, you know. It's just a really freaking sad backstory. Like, she just wants to make herself so perfect that it became her downfall. Sad shit, man. Coming in number 4, we've got the Torn Prince. This one I thought was always pretty cool. I always thought this was probably one of the coolest ones when I was a kid because he had the baseball bat, and when I would play Grand Theft Auto 3, that was like one of my favorite weapons to use in that game. So there's probably some relation there. But he's just got those freaking burns and that road rash all over the one side of his face. It's just really, really gnarly looking death wound there. And he's shown to be one of the more aggressive ghosts when you see him constantly swinging his bat at the glass. When he's trying to freaking kill Matthew Lillard when they're having their little quick scuffle there. When Tony Shalhoub and Matthew Lillard are carrying the glass, and here he comes again, and he's swinging for the fences, as Matt Lillard said there. This guy had a freaking attitude problem, and it showed every time he was on screen. The backstory was pretty cool. Another one of those really tragic ones where it's like, yeah, this is just some dude who's going to be a star baseball player one day if he can ever get out of the small town, but he dies in a drag race. Very freaking upsetting shit, man. But the Torn Prince, very cool. We finally hit the top 3, guys. 3 ghosts left. If you guys are keeping score at home, you know which ones those are. We're looking at the Hammer, the Jackal, and the Juggernaut. The last 3 ghosts you really want to mess with. But which order are they going to fall into? Coming in number 3, we are looking at the Jackal. And I know this is probably one of the more iconic of the ghosts in the series. I mean, he's got the freaking cage on his head and the claws. He almost stripped Shane and Elizabeth for us, so I think we all remember him for that. If she hadn't had that scene in American Pie, we probably would have been really hateful toward the Jackal. But He's one of those ghosts that I think is one of the scariest, really, in a lot of ways. When you consider the backstory there, it's probably one that I think would make for the most interesting standalone horror film, where you have this guy in the late 1800s, early 1900s even, who's basically a sadistic cannibal who lashes out on freaking prostitutes and shit. I don't know, it's just one of those things. It just kind of makes your skin crawl a little bit when you think of fuckers like that. And to see that there is a ghost who is basically that type of character, it's really freaky. And I love that he actually checks himself into an asylum, so he knew he had freaking problems, like, in his backstory there. And he ends up dying in a freaking fire when the asylum burns down, but he was like the only one who didn't get out. But the whole cage on the head and the claws, the freaking laugh, just about everything this one offers, I think, makes the Jackal one of the scariest, but he's only number 3 here. Coming in at number 2, we have the Juggernaut. A lot of people probably would have had him at number 1, if not the Jackal. He's one of those ones that, again, is one of the last ghosts you want to run into. I mean, he's the one who freaking snaps Matthew Lillard like a toothpick. Dude's like 6 and some change, like 6'9", 6'7". You don't want to screw with him. He's another one of those ones in the backstory where he was a sadistic serial killer. He would freaking take people, like stranded motorists, back to the junkyard where he was working at, and he would break every bone in their body with his bare hands. Like, that's just some scary and sadistic shit right there. It's like, you're not gonna die a quick death at his hands. You're gonna die slowly, and then you're gonna be fed to his dogs. Like, that I think would be one of the worst ways to go out. To be freaking murdered and fed to somebody's dogs. Like, they're not gonna find you ever like that. That would be freaking miserable. But the Juggernaut is definitely one of the scariest ones, but his backstory lacks something. But he does make up with the opening scene where they're capturing him in the junkyard. That was a really cool scene there, where it's our first encounter with any of the ghosts, so he kind of makes the first impression there. It did not disappoint. But there's one that I like better. So coming in at number 1 is, of course, going to be the Hammer. This ghost, I think, has the coolest look out of the bunch, where he's got all the nails going through his body, those big, thick railroad spikes. He's got the one hand severed and replaced with the hammer itself. Just really effective, really painful looking design for the character. His backstory, too, I think is one of the saddest, really, when it comes down to it. And when you consider that his character in the backstory was a black guy in the pioneer days, like the old frontier and shit. Like, he was basically accused of stealing. He goes to defend himself and said, no, I didn't do that. And his freaking wife and kids end up getting freaking mutilated by a band of influential white guys. And he goes and takes his revenge, and then he ends up getting, he gets freaking all the nails driven into his body and basically becomes the Hammer. It's just one of those things where it's disturbing, and if his backstory was made into a film, I feel like that would be one of those ones where everybody would be divided on it. Some people would say, oh, that's too woke, or someone would be like, this is one of those horror movies that could win a fucking Oscar, it'd be one of those ones that's sort of in those two camps, and that's sort of why I think his backstory is one of the most effective. It just it shows sort of the dark side of a certain period in American history. All that aside, the Hammer, the coolest ghost of the bunch, definitely one of the most violent, and it shows, like, any person that he comes across who's alive, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna put you in the fucking realm that I'm in, buddy. Best fucking believe it. So the Hammer, coolest ghost out of the bunch, out of the 12. So there you have it, guys. That was my ranking of the 12 ghosts and 13 ghosts. What did you guys think of that? How would you rank the ghosts? Let me know down below. Tell me why if you want to go into all that. Otherwise, just tell me the order you'd put them. Thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to hit the little buttons down there. Keep updated with the channel. It helps out a lot. Helps me get out of the algorithmic rut. Anyway, all that aside, you guys have a good day. We'll see you next time.